We were talking about self-serving bias last time. Self-serving bias is the tendency to perceive yourself favorably. We try to do that as much as possible because, you know, we're human. That's what humans do. Most business people see themselves as more ethical than the average business person. We have a president of the United States right now who is a businessman, and some of the things that he does, most people are going, I don't understand why he's doing that. And it may just be because he's a business person, and in business, the only way to get ahead, which is the reason why bosses ask you the questions that they are, the only way to get ahead is sometimes to be unethical. Or what we would consider unethical, but it's not unethical as far as business people are concerned, as confusing as that is. 90% of business managers rate themselves superior to their average peer. They think they're better than everybody else. It's almost impossible. High school students rate themselves as more honest, persistent, original, and reliable than the average student, which is also impossible. Most drivers consider themselves above average drivers. Well, that's kind of almost impossible since everybody can't be better than average. It just doesn't make any sense. Most people perceive themselves as more intelligent than their average peer, better looking and much less prejudiced than their average peer. Most adults believe that they support their aging parents more than do their siblings. Los Angeles residents, I don't know, has anybody ever been to Los Angeles? Did you guys ever know? Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Shitty place,
Yeah.
isn't it? I mean, the air is like, you can taste it.
Mm-hmm.
You can taste the air. That's how bad it is. Los Angeles residents view themselves healthier than most of their neighbors, even though they're breathing in, you know, garbage. And most college students believe that they will outlive their actuarially predicted death by about 10 years. Actuarially, probably you guys are in your 70s. That's your actuarial death. Mine when I was born was 56, and I'm 70 years old right now, or I'm in my 70th year anyway. So I've outlived my actuarial predicted death. I had a 50th high school reunion. There were 72 people that graduated, and of those 72 people, 12 of them are dead, have died. 5 of them committed suicide. No, this is a long time ago.
So who predicts that?
Insurance companies. And the reason insurance companies even care is because when you buy life insurance, they want to find out how much money you're going to pay into it and how much money they can make off of you. If you buy life insurance and then die next year, they just lost a ton of money. So what they need to do is only let people buy life insurance who are going to live beyond the money that they're going to pay out. So if you're paying $1,200 a year and it's a $100,000 life insurance policy, they need you to live for 40 or 50 years so that they can make money. That's the way it works. How was your high school? Best high school on the reservation?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Which one is it?
Pinyon, but now it's not.
It used to be.
It used to be when I was there.
Okay.
Tahachi?
Is the best high school on the reservation? That's odd because both of you went to different places, but they were both the best.
I mean, statistically, yeah, we were.
Statistically, there you go. Okay, that's all that's important. No matter what the statistics say, most people see their community, state, and region as similar to that described by Garrison Keillor of Lake Wobegon. This used to be on the radio every Saturday night. It was Garrison Keillor was on the radio. Arizona, best state in the union? Best place to raise a kid? What do you think? Would you raise your family here?
There's no natural disasters. There's no flooding. It doesn't get that cold.
Best state in the union?
Yeah.
Best damn state in the union. Best place to raise a kid? Raise a family. You're going to raise your family here.
Probably.
Probably. You're going to raise your family here. Arizona. You wouldn't move out of the state for love or money, right? Well, maybe love.
Probably between New Mexico and Arizona.
Would you move to Montana? It's cold up there. Would you move to
Hawaii.
Hawaii? Would you move to Hawaii?
I would.
You'd move to Hawaii?
Mitsubi.
Okay. I've been to Phoenix. It's a shitty place. That's the worst place in the world. Can you imagine people living there?
If you're native, usually you have to move to Phoenix.
You have to move to Phoenix?
I don't know, that's just like what everybody says, like, once you graduate, everybody moves to Phoenix.
Don't move to Albuquerque. They seem to kill everybody over there.
Yeah.
Oh my God. There were 3 road rages last week. Last week, and people were shooting at each other on the road. Nutty stuff. One guy got shot in the face.
There's a shooter at one of the schools in Albuquerque too. My cousin's brother was going to school there. They were just about to drop him off until they got turned around because somebody was shooting.
Oh.
So, like, wow.
So, New Mexico, not the best state in the
No.
union. Okay. But Arizona, best state in the damn union. No? Utah? If you had your druthers, you could live any place you wanted, and wherever you went, you'd get a really nice house and you'd have a nice job. Where would you go? What state would you move to?
I would leave the U.S. altogether.
You'd leave the United States and go to
China.
Samoa.
Samoa. You know that it's an island, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It's an island.
It's like,
Nobody can get to you.
well, that's not, well, your relatives can't ask you for money, that's for damn sure. That's not bad. Okay, so we all have this idea that wherever we live is the best place in the union. Your high school is the best high school on the reservation. And so was your high school is the best, and they were different high schools as ranges that we've seen. In Lake Wobegon, all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average. Well, how in the world could everybody be above average? That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Statistically, that's impossible. Most people practice some degree of unrealistic optimism. And of course, that's unrealistic optimism. Both of your schools can't be the best ones on the reservation. But wherever you are, you have to think that. And this is known as unrealistic optimism. I grew up in the best state in the best county in the whole United States, but that was the only place I'd ever been. So, well, kind of, pretty much. Now that I've lived all over the world, I can tell you that it wasn't the nicest place in the whole wide world. And the school that we were going to, which everybody said was a really good school, turned out to be a school that taught us how to be factory workers. So if I wanted to be a factory worker, I was right there. Okay, I could have done it. But of course, I didn't go. I went to college. I went to college and became an English teacher, and then I joined the military and became a medic. And I went back to college and became a psychologist. And I've lived everywhere. I've lived a lot of different places. I miss Lubbock, Texas. I miss Columbus, Mississippi. I miss Wichita Falls, Texas. I don't miss California even a little bit. But I do miss Plattsmouth, Nebraska. That was a nice place to live. I miss Harlem, Montana. That was a nice place to live. I live in Lost Nation, Iowa right now, and it's a really nice place to live. But if we're talking about raising your kids, 48 and 49, two worst places in the United States to raise your children, Arizona and New Mexico. 48 and 49. Yeah, not a good place. My idea, well, maybe it's because of Phoenix. My daughter was moving out and getting a divorce. Well, she was already divorced. She was moving out of Florida, but she couldn't leave because the baby daddy wanted to keep the baby in Florida. She wanted to move to Iowa, where there was a lot of factors, but one of the factors was Iowa turns out to be the 4th best place to raise a kid in the country, and Florida's 36th. Florida's a dangerous place. There's a lot of not Albuquerque dangerous, but it's it's a pretty dangerous place to raise a kid. And it's not a very good place, lots of drugs, just tons of drugs. Not a very nice place to raise a kid. Iowa, not so many drugs. Anyway, so we all practice this unrealistic optimism, which is fine, because it's sometimes it's adaptive, and sometimes it's maladaptive. We see the future, and this is a positive thing. I mean, we need to see the future as holding only good things for us. I'm going to be successful. You're going to graduate from college. You're going to be successful. You're going to find a good job. Your relatives aren't going to hit you up for lots of money, hopefully. They're not going to pawn their dogs off on you. I don't know, that kind of stuff happens. Well, I have. Margaret pawns her dogs off on me. My problem. While unrealistic optimism may keep us going forward, sometimes it can get us in trouble. Many people see themselves as immune to misfortune and so do not prepare themselves for it. We just had to pay our taxes. Actually, taxes were supposed to be cut, but we paid $1,500 more this year than we did last year. So either somebody lied to us. Gee, that's a possibility. Either somebody lied to us or we did something wrong. But we paid $1,500 more this year than we did last year. So right now I'm kind of in bad shape. I got to drive all the way home, then all the way back, and I got to pay for all that gasoline. And we have to pay more money. Actually, it's $2,400. Arizona hit us for $900 more dollars than we paid last year, and the feds hit us for $1,500 more than we did last year. So that's $2,400. Luckily, we get $1,200 back from Iowa, so it's only $1,200 extra dollars. While everyone marries for eternity, half of all marriages in Western society end in divorce. I tell you what, the first time I got married, I knew I was getting married forever. I was going to grow old with that old, that young lady, and I didn't. I can tell you. We lasted about 4.5 years, and then she took off with somebody else, which was the best day of my life, because I wanted her to die in an automobile accident at that point. But, so the reality is we have positive feelings about things, but sometimes they don't work out. People shun their seat belts. They don't wear seat belts in Montana. They don't because they think their car's going to explode and catch on fire. They won't be able to get out of their cars. It's their rationale anyway. Dumbest thing in the world. Montana has really stupid roads. They don't have ditches like you guys have. So if you run off the road, you don't just hit a ditch and stop. They've got it's angled so that if you run off the road, you angle down, and if you're going too fast, of course, you flip, and then you don't have your seatbelt when you get ejected from the car, which is a lot of fun. I had a student one time that had she was in a rollover, which is very common out there. She was in a rollover, she got flipped out on top of her aunt. No, her aunt was on top of her. And the car flipped them out. The aunt landed on top of her. And then the car rolled over them and killed her aunt, but didn't kill her. Broke her pelvis, but that was it. I know. It just crushed her aunt, as weird as that is. So they shun seatbelts, which doesn't make any sense at all. People deny the effects of smoking. Oh, it's not going to hurt me. Yeah, it's going to hurt you. It's going to kill you. It's going to take 10 years off your life. And I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it. You can stop smoking anytime you want, but it's not going to make any difference. They don't consistently use contraceptives, and then they get pregnant. Whoops. Those kinds of things happen. They swear that they can change an undesirable partner, but the reality is you can't change anybody. I can't change anybody, and I'm a psychologist. People who are optimistic have a positive self-efficacy, they have better health, they have more solid well-being than a pessimist does. So being a pessimist can be unhealthy. Being an optimist is a healthy thing to be. Optimism allows us to believe that happiness continues around the corner, despite no matter what the hell's going on right now. Tomorrow is going to be a better day. We believe that. As I keep telling you, I can't wait until spring break. I'm counting the days down. There's 10 more until I get to leave. As soon as my Thursday class is over with, I'm gonna throw that video recorder in my office and take off, grab the dogs and take off, and zip down the highway, fly all the way across New Mexico, stop someplace in Arizona or in Oklahoma. Have to go through the panhandle of Texas, but I get to go to Oklahoma. And I used to live in Oklahoma. I lived in Oklahoma for 4 years. I lived in the panhandle of Texas for 7 years. Lubbock, Texas. It's just below the panhandle. Anyway, I used to live in both those areas. I played softball, so I played ball at Cannon, which is in Clovis. There's another Air Force base in New Mexico. Anyway, we used to play ball down there all the time. However, a dash of realism, what Julie Norm calls defensive pessimism, can keep people's eyes open to the possibility of negatives. Smoking, just because you're optimistic doesn't mean you're not killing yourself with tobacco. Driving while intoxicated, people think that they can drive drunk, and 9 times out of 10 they'll be okay, but that 10th time they have an accident, they run off the road or something horrible happens to them. The lack of contraception, of course, maybe you didn't get pregnant. I mean, you've been having sex with this guy for an extended length of time and you've never used contraception. Maybe you've been lucky and not hit your ovulation dates. And then you're going to get pregnant. That's the way it works. Poor seatbelt usage, of course. I had a student that, this is kind of sad. Like I said, up in Montana, they have rollovers all the time. This lady was in a pickup truck, and there were 8 people in that pickup truck. They were all in the cab. It had 2 seats. And there were 8 people in the cab, and they were just jammed in there tight. This lady was speeding. She'd been drinking. She was driving. They rolled over, and she was the only one that was ejected, and she was the one that was killed. She's the one that drew my, I have a clock in my office, and she's the one that drew it. She gave it to me before she died, not afterwards. Anyway. Sometimes you need your seatbelt. During the Nixon administration, Richard Nixon would give speeches praising the silent majority. At the time, this was in the 1970s, early 1970s. Vietnam War was going on. People were marching against the war. And this was a daily occurrence in Washington, D.C. Sometimes they would scream outside the White House. And of course, it upset him a great deal that these Americans didn't like him. So he assumed that there were a lot of people out there, the silent majority, and they believed in all of his policies. And he had this delusion. He felt that there were conservatives in the country that backed his conservative policies as compared to the vocal minority that picketed Washington on a daily basis. Nixon assumed that most people favored his ideas. This is false consensus effect. The assumption that the way I think, everybody thinks. That's known as false consensus effect. The tendency to overestimate the commonality of one's opinions and one's undesirable or unsuccessful behaviors. Usually in the United States it works this way. It's the rule of 3s. 1/3 of the people are conservative, 1/3 of the people are liberal, and 1/3 of the people don't really care. During the Revolutionary War, 1/3 of the people were loyal to England, 1/3 of the people wanted to rebel, and 1/3 of the people really didn't care. So you didn't know which side they were on. In any election, about 1/3 of the population is Republican, 1/3 of the population is Democrat, and 1/3 of the population is what we refer to as independent. Independents usually don't pay that much attention to politics until right around election day, then they care. And they're the ones who usually decide the election, because the Republicans and Democrats pretty much have things balanced out. There are select areas of the country that are more conservative than others. The Deep South tends to be very conservative. Utah tends to be relatively conservative. The West tends to be far more conservative than the East. And one of the things that happened in the last election, one of the reasons that Donald Trump was elected president was because he was getting votes out of the Midwest. And the Midwest normally had been Democratic, but in this case, they barely went Republican. And he won the election. He won the Electoral College. He lost the popular election by 3 million votes, but he won the Electoral College. And that's why he's president of the United States. So how many people believe what you say? That's the question. Just as people tend to assume that everyone has similar ideas to them, people also tend to overestimate their abilities to see their actions as unique. This is known as the false uniqueness effect. You're unique. Your ideas, that's why you can write the Great American Novel. That's why you could invent a video game that everybody would want to play and you'd be a millionaire or billionaire. That's why you could be, if you were a movie star, why nobody could touch you. False uniqueness effect. The reality is there's a lot of actors, a lot of writers, they write, the same thing over and over again. And a lot of the books are very similar to one another. False consensus effect is overestimation of others, and the false uniqueness effect is underestimation of others. There are a lot of people that may have your ideas. We practice cognitive conceit. We overestimate the accuracy of our beliefs and judgments and misremember our own past in self-enhancing ways. So a lot of times we lie to ourselves. And that's okay, because it makes us feel better. And as long as we feel better, maybe we won't hang ourselves or jump off a building or something. And that's okay. I mean, if that's what it takes to keep us from killing ourselves, then that's okay. If we cannot misremember an event, then we will probably try to justify it. I tell you about things that happened to me in the past. I don't tell you how scared I was. How really, really scared I was. I never talk about that. You may think I'm just walking around, I leaned over and talked to this guy and the guy gets shot right behind me. That scared me a lot because we were in a helicopter. There was a helicopter flying over all weekend. Just back and forth and back and forth. Does anybody have any idea what was going on? Normally helicopters give me spooks, but different type of helicopter. The helicopters that I flew in, the rotors were a lot slower. This sounded like a bee. It was going so fast. And the dogs, every time it went over, they bark at it. That was exciting. So we misremember an event, and usually that's how we justify it to ourselves. The more favorably we see ourselves in a select dimension, the more likely we are to use that dimension to judge others. So if we see ourselves as really intelligent, then we judge others by their intelligence. This is very important. If politics are important to us, then we judge others by their politics. The more favorably we view ourselves, the more we think others perceive us in flattering ways. I mean, if I see myself as handsome, I assume all of you see me as handsome as well, despite the fact that I try not to look in the mirror every morning for that very reason. I assume that my bolo tie worked, even though the colors are way off. I don't know, it may not work at all. I have no idea. But I'm going to wear it anyway, damn it. I don't care. And it kind of goes with my gray shirt. My gray shirt kind of goes with my green pants. But I'm a guy, so, I put in just about anything together, whether they really go together or not. If a piece of information flatters us, then we believe it, and we evaluate positively both the test and any evidence suggesting that the test is valid. I keep telling you guys this. When I was in grade school, there were a lot of really smart kids in my class, but they didn't tell us how smart we were, so we thought we were average. It's really kind of weird. Some of those individuals had really, really high IQs, really smart kids, but since nobody told us how smart we were, they turned out to be bums. They never did anything with their life. They just kind of wandered around and ran into the walls just like everybody else does, despite the fact they were really smart. But the ones that knew that they were smart went on and became, these wonderful, fabulous people. They became doctors and veterinarians and lawyers, and one of them became a city planner. And he was a city planner in Cincinnati for 25 years. He's got millions and millions of dollars, that kind of stuff. But these were the guys that were told that they were smart. So they had these positive attitudes about themselves. We bask in our reflected glory of someone that we are acquainted to. So if we talk about our relatives, we don't talk about the relative that is in prison right now. Well, I do. But we talk, usually, I had an aunt that looked at our ancestry. And she picked out all the ones she liked. So she picked out the guy, the princess of France. She picked out She picked out all these really important people. Well, we have 2 presidents in our background. We do. We have 2 presidents in our ancestry. So I don't talk about the farmers that lost their farms. I talk about my 2 presidents that are in my ancestry. We bask in our reflected glory of the people that we're acquainted to. I once knew, who have I known that was famous? Have I known anybody that was famous? I went to school with an author by the name of Dan Simmons. And we were in creative writing class together, and people like my stuff better than his. But, and he's written like 15 novels. I haven't written anything. Anyway, if linked with a negative person, we soften our view of that individual. They're okay, and that's what we do with our relatives. So if somebody comes to us and say, your relative just raped and murdered a 10-year-old girl and then set her on fire, dismembered her and set her on fire, we'd say, well, he was a pretty nice guy. He was okay. That's not him. Yes, it is. That's him. That's one of the things he's done.
People do
Only in Albuquerque. Research shows that when a person with high self-esteem faces failure, they tend to maintain their self-worth by perceiving others as failing and by exaggerating their superiority over others. And we see this in the president. This is really weird. Whether he wins or whether he loses, he always couches it in positive terms, the most positive terms he can possibly come up with. And then he'll go and he will tweet negative things about other people. Well, no other president has done what I've done, that kind of thing. He's really good at that. So Trump fits this very, very well. He never says anything negative about himself. He never apologizes for anything that he does, which is kind of interesting. While sibling rivalry is not universal, when brothers are close in age or sisters are close in age, people tend to compare them. And this, of course, is a problem. But back in the old days, mummies and daddies used to pump out kids every year or every 2 years or so. So, we were all really close to each other. My parents started having kids in 44, and they quit in 54. So they had 6 kids in 10 years. And for 2 of those years, my dad was overseas. He was not even in the country. So when my dad came back, he started popping out kids, really. My mom was pregnant almost constantly for the first 3 years he was back in the country, as stupid as that is. They had my sister, me, and my brother, all within 3 years of each other, 4 years of each other. There were 3 of us born really close to each other. So you can imagine, people got, no, wait a minute. Johnny was born in 46, Nancy was born in 48, I was born in 49, Russell was born in 51, and David was born in 54, and he was a mistake. They didn't really want David. I don't want David. There's something wrong with David. Anyway, so there were a lot of us, and we were really close together. So a lot of people called me by my older brother's name, Johnny. Johnny. They thought I was John. They never got me mixed up with my sisters, thank goodness. But they'd get me mixed up with Johnny. So when I first started running track, he ran track too. Some people would yell, come on Johnny, come on Johnny. That's not my name. My name's not John. Anyway, so they tend to compare you. Unfortunately, my brother John was also really, really smart. He was also really, really popular. So when they compared me with my brother, it's almost like, bronze and gold or something, night and day. And of course, I was not day, I was night. Unfortunately. Well, anyway, so they tend to do that to you. If one is markedly more able than the other, there tends to be conflict between you and your brother. And of course, there was a lot of conflict between me and my older brother. Not so much with my younger brother, but with my older brother. When facing a romantic rival, an individual is more likely to feel jealousy of their rival's achievements if they are in the same general field as their own aspirations. So if two doctors, they might have a conflict with one another because they're after the same woman, or they're after the same job. And of course, there's a bit of rivalry between my colleagues and I. That's fairly common. Why are relationships so important to our self-esteem? Despite how individualistic we may think we are, social relationships are a gauge of social acceptance or rejection. Social acceptance is conducive to thriving and survival. So we have to be accepted by other individuals in order to feel like we're acceptable, like we're part of society. It's easy to feel like you're being rejected by society if people don't look at you. Now, one of the problems we have in the United States, we have a lot of large cities, and in those cities, people don't look at each other. So there's a lot of social rejection being felt by people in cities. Low self-esteem predicts an increased risk of depression, drug abuse, and some forms of delinquency. Research shows when faced with failure, people with high self-esteem are more likely to react with aggression. And you can think about when you were in grade school, the individuals that were not as socially acceptable as other individuals, they became the potheads, they became the delinquents, and you could predict exactly who those kids were going to be in the first grade or kindergarten. You knew exactly who they were. They were the kids that nobody wanted to play with. They were the kids that were bullies when they were young. These are the individuals that will be socially rejected. And these are the individuals, remember I told you we had 5 kids that committed suicide. There was something wrong with 2 of them were really inappropriate people. And they committed suicide in their 20s. One tried to join the military. The military will accept anybody as long as you'll shoot people. As long as you're willing to be a soldier. You can be as inappropriate as you possibly want to be. But he had really serious problems, joined the Marines, and eventually, of course, when he got out of the Marines, he committed suicide. Another kid had epilepsy, and epilepsy is, there's a lot of people with epilepsy and you don't know it. But this kid, of course, he was epileptic. He had a couple seizures at school, and after that, people didn't want to be around him so much anymore. He's a good friend of mine. We used to sit together on a school bus. And as long as I was around, as long as Joe was around, George was okay. But as soon as we weren't around anymore, of course I went off to college, Joe stuck around, but George tried to become an architect. And he didn't do very well. And he had a set of twins and then he committed suicide. As strange as that may seem. And there were 3 others that eventually committed suicide. 2 of them had to do with drugs. 1 of them had to do with alcohol. What are we talking about? Self-esteem. Roy Baumeister has done a great deal of work with self-esteem and finds that people with high self-esteem are more likely to be obnoxious, more likely to interrupt other individuals, and more likely to talk at people rather than to people. And we, of course, you probably have been around these people as well. People with high self-esteem can't seem to listen to people, other individuals. By making excuses for ourselves, it helps us protect us from depression. And of course, remember, our life is this, we're on a tightrope and we're constantly trying to balance everything. And of course, if we have low self-esteem, then we're more likely to be off balance and we're more likely to get depressed. So we try to keep from being depressed, and we do this by making excuses, by using what Freud used to refer to as defense mechanisms. We try to over-rationalize, we try to intellectualize things. Well, we try to forget things. We just forget bad things. And this is one of the reasons why people smoke. This is one of the reasons why people take drugs. This is one of the reasons why they drink alcohol. Everybody tells them that smoking is going to kill you, that drugs are going to kill you, that alcohol is probably going to kill you eventually. So why don't they listen? They're forgetting all the bad stuff. Makes them feel good, makes them feel balanced. While depressed people may make more accurate appraisals of themselves, the negative thinking tends to mire them deeper in depression. And of course, that's not good. It's better to be deluded than sad. That's one of the things you might think. And in reality, that's true. I would rather be nutty as a fruitcake and feel happy than be sad and be realistic. I'm not a very tall person. This should bother me that I'm not very tall. I'm 3 inches below average. That means more than half the men in the United States are taller than I am, as depressing as that is. And one of the most depressing things that has happened to me in my life is when my wife left me for a shorter man. That was depressing. He was like 5'3", she's 5'2". Oh man, I'm about 5'6", 5'7", so I know. I was the shortest guy in my grade school until the 3rd grade. I was the shortest individual in the school until I was in the 3rd grade. And in the 3rd grade, my brother started school. He was a little bit shorter than I was. The girls used to carry me around like a doll.
Oh no.
I know, it was depressing, but I was cute. Well, anybody that tall is cute. Research shows that maintaining a high self-esteem, even when there is evidence to the contrary, reduces an individual's anxiety, even in the face of continuing threats. It's better to be deluded than to be sad. We're here to be happy. And the reason we want to be happy is because it balances everything out. So we're here to be happy. That's one of the reasons why we drink so much, why we take so many drugs, and people swear that pot, what did somebody tell me this weekend? Pot cures cancer. Marijuana cures cancer. How about that? You might know that? It's not even close to being true. As a matter of fact, pot causes lung cancer. Whoops, I know. So.
That's exactly what I thought too when I heard that. I was thinking, like, doesn't it consist of smoke, and smoke is what causes cancer?
Oh yeah, well it irritates your mucous membranes, of course it does. I mean, that's just so illogical. She even had a logical explanation as to why it cures cancer. So her claim was that the more you keep in your system, the less likely you're going to get cancer. There you go. How about that? And then she had these two. Two journal articles, and she said both of them said that, and both of them said that marijuana causes cancer. I was shocked that she misread both articles so completely. Most university sorority members perceive those in their sorority as far less likely to be conceited and snobby than those in other sororities. And of course, that's a complaint of sororities on college campuses, is that they're conceited and snobby. But, of course, people delude themselves to thinking, not my group, we're not conceited or, of course, snobby. 2/3 of Americans feel that their child's public school is good, while seeing the nation's public schools as unable to teach. And of course, we already talked about the 2 best schools on the reservation. And there we go. We know exactly which ones they are. Damn it. Most executives overpredict their firm's ability to produce. And of course, those are dumbbells. As much fun as that is. Such self-serving bias can lead an individual to gamble away their paycheck, having faith in their own good fortune, of course. Such self-serving bias will permit an individual to open a doomed business without proper background capital. Such self-serving bias usually possibly took us into Vietnam. It possibly took the Soviets into Afghanistan, where they got their butts kicked. And it may have led us into Iraq, which we're still not free of.
It's going to lead us into Venezuela next.
I hope. Venezuela, South America is a swamp. And there's just, if we get into South America, we're going to have to take over the whole continent. We're going to be fighting border wars all around the South America. Venezuela is just a mess.
It'd be nice to invade a beautiful country for once, though.
We'll get our asses kicked. That's what the Soviets said in Afghanistan. We shouldn't have any problem. We've got tanks. Well, yeah, that's true. We have tanks. Even right now, the Taliban still controls 60% of the country. So even though we're saying we're going to pull out of there, we can't. It's a mess. It's just a mess. Afghanistan has always been a miasma, no matter who was there. Even when the Brits were there, they couldn't control it. They could only control the cities. They couldn't control the rural areas.
I heard someone say you can kill a terrorist with a bullet when you kill terrorism with a book.
Makes sense. You have to change people's minds. It's the only way that it works. Self-presentation is the person that we present to others. False modesty is the facade that people may present when they feel superior to someone else. This may take the form of insulting yourself, fishing for reassurance or praise. It also may be used to keep others from becoming envious or resentful. And these are our self-presentations. Sometimes people sabotage their chances for success by creating impediments that make success less likely. This self-handicapping serves to protect the individual from dealing with failure. The failure is due to their own handicap, not their lack of ability. We see people that drink for this reason, they take drugs for this reason. It always gives them an excuse as to why they failed. And it's always good to have an excuse. When I was running track, I wasn't the fastest quarter miler, but I had a teammate that was actually faster than I was, but I usually beat him. And the reason I beat him was because he was a self-handicapper. He would stay out all night the night before. He would drink. He would smoke. And that always gave him an excuse as to why he wasn't as fast as I was. He had all these other things that he had to do, so he couldn't practice. So he was a self-handicapper. And I beat him almost every time I ran against him. Just as people attribute their failures on external causes, they themselves may choose to place the impediment as a form of self-protection. And it protects their ego, which is okay. He later became a lawyer, and he's a very successful lawyer, has lots of money. He's got the most gorgeous wife I've ever met. You know, she's like 70 years old and looks like, I don't know, Britney Spears. She's gorgeous. And she's German. She has a German accent, which is cute. It's just cute. Examples of self-handicapping, reducing perception, preparation for important individual athletic events, and this guy was always doing something. Everything was more important than running. Giving one's opponents an advantage, report feeling depressed, perform poorly at the beginning of a task in order not to create unreachable expectations, not trying as hard as you can during a tough, ego-involving task, and so you always have an excuse as to why you lost. Yes?
Is ego the main reason? Are there other reasons that people do this?
We have to protect our egos. It's very important. Sure. It's our feeling of self-worth. And there has to be a reason as to why we're not better than somebody else. We have this problem in the United States where everybody has to be number one. Number two is not good enough. Number three is not good enough. Placing isn't good enough. You have to win. You have to win everything. And this is a really serious problem when we're talking about kids exercising. When we talk about kids playing baseball, kids playing football, kids playing soccer. If their team doesn't win, then they don't want to play anymore. Why? Because somebody has convinced them that if you're not a winner, you're a loser. And so rather than being a loser, this famous L thing that we've got going, instead of being a loser, they would rather not participate, and then they're not losers anymore. So these kids are dropping out.
What about accepting defeat ahead of time? Is that self-sabotage?
Yeah.
So if you say,
Self-handicapping.
it doesn't matter if you win or lose, just try your best.
Yeah, well,
Self-sabotage?
isn't that what life's all about? Is it bad being, owning a grocery store that's the second largest grocery store in, not Albuquerque, in,
Saley?
in Salem? Is that bad? Is it bad being that grocery store? I mean, you're still making money. Why do you have to be the best? If there's somebody that's faster than you, my excuse was always, everybody's taller than I am. Damn, everybody's taller than I am. So, I mean, just the fact that I really irritated people when I won because I'm so not very tall. I'm so short. So it's very irritating to those people, you can imagine. Wow. Yeah, I know, self-handicapping. But it's our ego. We have to protect our egos.
It's ego.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
It's ego then, that's the main thing that drives
Yeah,
it.
it's our concept of self-worth. It's everything massed together that gives us our self-worth. Self-presentation often happens without conscious effort, especially with someone new or with members of the opposite sex. We tend to put our best foot forward and attempt to make an impression on them. I remember watching Murphy Brown way in the old days, when Murphy Brown was a brand new television show. And this guy came into her office, and she sucked in her stomach and she pushed out her chest. And afterwards she said, "I don't believe I did that. You know, I never do that for anybody." And here she was trying to impress this guy, and she sucked in her stomach and she pushed out her chest, trying to show him how attractive she was. And she, of course, this is Murphy Brown. She's a reporter, and she's got all this self-worth, and she doesn't really need to do that to make herself feel attractive to some other individual. And then eventually, of course, they did get together, and eventually he admitted to her that he did exactly the same thing. Self-presentation. And sometimes we don't realize what we're doing. But I did check my bolo tie in the mirror this morning to make sure it looked okay. Self-presentation. Self-monitoring, being attuned to the way one presents oneself in social situations, and adjusting one's performance to create desired impressions. This is tough. This is tough because sometimes we get ourselves into situations that are alien to us. And so how do we know how to act? We know how to act by watching other people. This is important. Watching other people is important. It tells us how we need to act. And this is known as self-monitoring. So if you were, and that's one of the reasons if you go to a restaurant, a fancy restaurant, not in Albuquerque, in Gallup, there are no fancy restaurants. In Gallup, what the hell am I talking about? Or do we want to go to a fancy, Oklahoma City? I have to drive all the way to Oklahoma City to find a fancy restaurant. Go to a fancy restaurant in Oklahoma. People in Oklahoma aren't the same as people from Arizona and New Mexico. They act different. And they're not the same as people in Texas. So when we're at that fancy restaurant in Oklahoma, how do we know how to act? How do we know how loud to be? Are people in Oklahoma as loud as people in New Mexico and in Arizona and in Texas and in Iowa? That's the question. How do we know how loud to talk? We listen to all the people around us, and then we temper our speech so that it matches everybody else. How do we know when to drop the F-bomb? Well, wait a minute, we're at a fancy restaurant. We probably shouldn't swear. Probably. Probably a good idea. We may get kicked out of the place. So we self-monitor, no matter where you are. Blakes. How do you know how to act in Blakes? I was the only non-native that was in Blake's the other day. How am I supposed to act? There we go, he's laughing. Thinks it's funny. How do I know how to line up? It's different at Blake's. The lake doesn't, the line isn't straight, it's crooked. It curves around that one trash can. It curves in front of that trash can. So how do I know if I'm next? Well, this is what happened to me. So I'm standing there, there's a guy here and a guy here, a guy here and a guy here, and I get behind this guy that's off to the one side. And then somebody comes in the front door and they start standing right here. So now we got a Y-shaped line. So who's going to go next? Well, as it worked out, everybody went in line and they waited until I kind of curved around, so then they got behind. I didn't know. You know, maybe they're trying to get in front of me so they get their hamburger before I do. But I think I was okay because I can't eat those green chilies. They just burn a hole in my gut. So I know. Do you like green chilies?
Yeah.
How can you eat that stuff? I used to eat that stuff and then it burned a hole in my stomach.
What's the opposite of self-monitoring?
That's inappropriate behavior. So if you're not a self-monitorer, then possibly you're going to dress incorrectly and go in and be rejected. So this is part of being a social being. The opposite of not being a self-monitor would probably be autism. I mean, if we can go that far. They don't know how other people act because they don't even see other people. Does that make sense? Okay. Or Asperger's. I had a friend that, gorgeous man. The man was pretty. He was pretty. My first wife was madly in love with him. I mean, he was that pretty. He was the miler. I was the quarter miler, he was the miler. Just a good-looking guy. But he had Asperger's syndrome. And he was funny because anything he did was appropriate because he was so pretty. You know, and no matter what he wore. Is that possible? Does that make sense? Is there any logic to that? Of course there is. Because, I mean, what we're doing is looking for acceptance. Looking for social acceptance. And he was socially acceptable no matter what he did, because he was so pretty. And the women just went gaga over him. And the men, he was tall. It's height again. So no matter what he did, it was acceptable. He could wear a Speedos to a restaurant, and everybody would go, "Oh, I should have worn my Speedos," you know, that kind of thing. So the opposite would be autism, I guess.
Or narcissism?
Or narcissism. Well, no, narcissists are big-time self-monitors.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, they always want to be the best. So in order to be the best, you have to know what other people
Oh, so self-monitoring can take different forms then?
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
So the difference would be narcissism is that they know they're doing it, but what we were talking about before, they don't know what's going on.
Right. Now the interesting thing, and I hate to pick on Trump again, but Trump is really kind of interesting because everybody around him dresses just like he does, but not quite as well. If you notice, he wears really long ties, and there's a reason why he wears the long ties, and we're not going to talk about his penis. But but other people will wear the same color tie, but it'll be a shorter tie. I mean, he wears ties that literally go beyond his belt. And he does this on a relatively continual basis. When he wears a blue tie, everybody wears a blue tie. When he wears a red tie, everybody in his group wears a red tie. There's something about him that always has to be better than everybody else that's around him. And we could call him a narcissist, I guess, but I mean, he's a self-monitorer. And if somebody's dressed better than him, then he wouldn't allow them to be around him. As interesting as that is. And you can watch the old videos of him walking around New York or whatever. He always had the best looking woman. He dated like everybody and their cousin. All the models, all the actresses. He always had, a very attractive woman on his arm. Very, very fascinating to watch him. And we'll see what happens. I keep saying, we're going to see what happens.
You know, that would be an interesting exercise for maybe the 400 level students in psychology to,
Well, where would we go to see this?
just to do like a diagnosing.
Oh, you mean of
And yeah.
Trump? Or his minions? It's interesting that he has so many billionaires in his cabinet. We've never seen this many billionaires before. But here he's got, what's his name? DeVos is a billionaire. I mean, half the people in his cabinet are billionaires. Why would that be? Why would he have so many billionaires in his cabinet? It's because they understand him. They're like him. They have mindsets that are very much like him. They're also business people, which is just like him. Some people are high self-monitors while others are low self-monitors. Some people will readily adjust their behavior to their circumstance and the individuals that they are around. A good example would be the ceremony that we're talking about having. When is that ceremony?
Starts tomorrow.
It starts tomorrow? Oh my goodness gracious. Anyways, the ceremony. So how in the world are you supposed to act? This has to do with self-monitoring. So let's assume, I've been to ceremonies before, but not here on this reservation. I've been to other ceremonies. Let's assume I go to that ceremony. How do I know, when do I know when to talk? How do I know what to say? Or do I have to be quiet through the whole thing? Having been to other ceremonies, I don't really have to self-monitor that much, but I will, I can't talk during the ceremony. That's disrespectful. And of course, that's part of self-monitoring as well. So, some social settings, but there may be people there that are fairly inappropriate. It's one of the reasons I don't want to go. I don't want to see inappropriate people doing something inappropriate. Some social settings dictate that the individual adjusts their behavior to fit the social setting. One problem with people who are high self-monitors, they may espouse one idea in one circumstance and the opposite in another. And that's because they are trying to react properly to the circumstance. And so they change their minds relatively readily. Yeah.
No question. So, is it self-monitoring or teaching self-monitoring? Like, just an example I was thinking about when we were talking about this with my son. I always tell him not to act like the other kids on the bus. If they're being naughty, if they're being loud,
Sure.
I don't care if other people are doing it loose and still. If other kids are being loud in school and disruptive, I don't care if other people do. You don't.
There you
do
go.
that. That's still self-monitoring?
Yeah, you want him to be a self-monitor, but you want him to be a self-monitor that doesn't act like everybody else. You want him to monitor other people's behavior and to not be like that. And that's what I tried to tell my kids. I tried to tell them to be individuals. I didn't want them to act like everybody else. Well, everybody's doing it. The wrong answer for me. And so I raised my kids as iconoclasts, as kids that acted differently than the people around them, which meant that they were somewhat socially rejected because societies like you to act just like they do. Everybody, I mean, not everybody, that's not really fair, but a lot of people want you to be just like everybody else. I grew up in a town that everybody was a Methodist. There were 3 types of Methodist church in town. First Methodist Church, the EUB, which is German Methodist Church, and the Wesleyan Church, which was an English Methodist Church. So if you're another religion, and there were some people in town that were Catholic, they went to Methodist Church anyway, just to be socially accepted.
One of the interesting, I guess, things about self-monitoring too, is I noticed that there's some people who try to enforce it.
Right, sure,
Like, you gotta do what we're doing.
exactly.
Or you'll be,
Exactly. And we can talk about any religion that you want. They all try to make you just like them. They want you to dress like them. They want you to act like them. They want you to use the same words that they do. Politics are kind of the same way. Republicans want you to talk like a Republican. Democrats want you to talk like a Democrat. So there's a lot of groups out there that want you to act just like them. If you're a Hell's Angel, you better have tattoos. And you better have long hair, and you better wear that leather jacket. You have to wear your collars. If you're a member of a gang, you have to wear your collars. Isn't that the way it works? There was a big battle in Great Falls, Montana between the, wait a minute, the Hells Angels and another group. It was a Mexican biker group. And the Hells Angels took their collars away from them. They wouldn't allow them to wear their colors in Great Falls, so they
do you
left.
think this is something that's like almost animalistic, like at our core, like you can go back to like, you need to be a part of a group, you need to be able to fit in to survive?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, if we're talking about indigenous people, we're talking about different tribes. We're talking about different groups of individuals that acted differently, potentially spoke different languages, but maybe they even spoke the same language, yet they were different. Why were they different? Well, this group cut their hair this way. This group braided their hair in another way. I used to live on the Fort Belknap Reservation, and one of the groups up there were the Grovon. Well, the Grovon always braided their hair in two braids, and then they put a scalp lock in front. They braided the front of their hair so that if somebody killed them, they could scalp them and pull it off by that scalp lock. And that was a challenge to other individuals, to other tribes that they were ready to fight because they had their scalp lock. As weird as that sounds. So yeah, I mean, that's just the way it works. Remember, in Europe was just kind of a miasma, and then all of a sudden it just kind of broke up into city-states, and then it broke into countries, into nation-states, and whatnot. Why did they do that? Well, it's because they were being fairly xenophobic. They were rejecting other individuals. And this is how we reject other people. This is how we accept other people. How we accept people in our group because they dress correctly, they speak the right words, they speak the right languages. And that's the way religions do it. We worship God in the right way, whichever God that may have. Or maybe it's a multiple gods. I mean, Hindus are that way. Hindus have lots of gods. Isn't that fun?
It's interesting.
So society, what we need to do is our job is to bring all these disparate groups together so that we can live in harmony, right? I mean, the world is supposed to be a balanced place, and each individual has to balance their life out. Keeps their brain from going insane, so we all have to do that. High self-monitors tend to be social chameleons. You never know who they are from one minute to the next. I had can I call her my girlfriend? I can't even call her my girlfriend. She was an interesting lady. And if this lady went into one environment, she acted one way. If she went into another environment, she was always socially acceptable. She was a fascinating cat. She was a nurse. So when she was around doctors, she acted one way. When she was around lab techs, she acted another way. When she was at a softball game, she acted another way. When she was out drinking, she acted another way. When she went to the bars, when she went to all the officers' clubs, she acted another way. This lady was about as much of a chameleon as you can possibly imagine. I was thinking of writing a book about her, and I was going to call her the malleable person. Because no matter what she was like an amoeba. She would just form herself in whatever society wanted her to be. It was fascinating. She was gorgeous. She was a very attractive woman. So she was able to get away. She was always socially acceptable, no matter what her circumstance, because she was a very, very pretty lady. She was also half Mohawk from Chillicothe, Ohio. Now, if you know anything about the Mohawks, they weren't that far west. Mohawks are on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains. They're up in upper New York State. That's where the Mohawks were. But her father was the Mohawks, for some reason, are able to walk the high steel. Their balance is so good that they can walk around on the girders. And that's how he got all the way over to Cincinnati. He was a high steel worker.
Off the top of your head, if there's anything documented, I don't know if you know anything about it, but just about what were Freud's thoughts on self-monitoring? How did he explain, or how did he look at, what was his perception?
He talked about self-monitoring all the time. That was society. The social aspect of life was very important to him. He was Jewish. He was born in Moravia. Moravia was an area of Czechoslovakia that was in between the Czechs and the Slovaks. And they put Jewish people there so that the Czechs wouldn't attack the Slovaks. They would attack the Jews. Everybody attacked the Jews. So they were being used as a buffer, as somebody to kill. It's better than raiding the Slovaks if you're Czech. It's better than raiding the Czechs if you're a Slovak. So that's what they used them for that. So he was very much aware of what was going on in society. He was a rejected person. He was Jewish. So society rejected him. So self-monitoring was big on most of the things that he talked about. Remember, he talked about defense mechanisms that we maintain in order to forget about the bad things and only remember the good things.
Do you think a lot of this is tied into people's adolescence and childhood?
Well, that's where we learn how to be a good self-monitor, or we don't. And that's why people that are autistic, people with Asperger's syndrome, these were individuals that couldn't operate in society because they didn't notice how other people were acting, as weird as that is. How am I doing on time?
10 to 8.
What is it? 10?
10.
10:10? I got 10 minutes. High self-monitors are social chameleons. Self-monitoring is the tendency to use cues from other people's self-presentation in controlling our own self-presentations. We watch other people, and if I did go to that ceremony, what I would be doing would be watching the people around me to find out how I would be supposed to act. High self-monitors are skilled impression managers, and of course, they are social monitors. I don't know, remember why I put a picture of my grandson, but that's when he was cute. He's not so cute anymore. He's 6. So you're not cute when you're 6 years old, but you're cute when you're 2 or 3. Anyway, there's my daughter and my grandson. You can see how cute the little snot is. And he knows it, and he gets away with all kinds of stuff. He's got a problem at school. He touches people. He doesn't touch them inappropriately, but any touching in school these days seems to be inappropriate. So he likes to hug people, he likes to be around people, he'll put his arm around people. He's getting into trouble, and people keep telling him not to do it. Of course, he's in Iowa. In Iowa, of course, you don't touch anybody. It's just the way it works. In Iowa. Chapter 6, that's chapter 7. Which one is chapter 6?
Did Erickson write about self-monitoring?
Yeah, Erickson, remember, Erickson was the guy that talked about society. He had all these social crises that everybody goes through.
I think I'd like to be interested in on his thoughts on it, just especially where it fits into his stages of development,
Right.
changes.
Right. As we change, we become more self-monitors. That's chapter 8. What is chapter 6? Does anybody have a book? What is chapter 6 about? Do I have the wrong number? No, it isn't 8. Ah, jeez, I don't have my glasses. Figure 6, right there. It's the lady with the umbrella, okay. It's supposed to rain all week, by the way. The need to justify our actions, the costs and benefits of dissonance reduction. How fun. There you go. Okay, I got it. On March 26, 1997, 39 members of Heaven's Gate cult in Rancho Santa Fe, California were found dead, participants in a mass suicide. 37 people committed suicide at the same time. The cult members died willingly and peacefully and didn't really consider it suicide. And you can watch their videos leading up to their suicide. And they're happy people. These guys are giddy because they're about to jump on a alien spaceship. It's kind of exciting. They believed a spaceship behind Hale-Bopp Comet was a ticket to a new life in paradise. And they were about to go to paradise. You can't beat that. When members of the Heaven's Gate cult could not find a spaceship behind the comet, they returned, they returned their telescope for a refund. Hale-Bopp came across the sky. You could see it every night. It was kind of exciting. They decided that there was a spaceship behind the comet. They tried to find it with a telescope, and since the telescope didn't work, they wanted a refund. Their attitude was clear, and given their premise, their logic was impeccable. We know an alien spaceship is following behind the Hale-Bopp Comet, and if an expensive telescope failed to reveal that spaceship, then there must be something wrong with the telescope, not something wrong with our logic. They knew the spaceship was there. And hopefully it was. Generally speaking, the members of Heaven's Gate cult were not stupid, irrational, or crazy. Neighbors considered them pleasant, smart, and reasonable people. These were very intelligent people. They made their money by doing IT work. They were programmers. They were very intelligent people. Their behavior was an extreme example of a normal human tendency, the need to justify our actions. You couldn't convince them of anything. They had all the right answers. Isn't this exciting that they had all the right answers? Religions do the same thing. That's the right answer. This is the right church. If you go to my church, you get to go to heaven. If you go to another church, you may not get to go to heaven. So you need to be the right one. You need to practice my religion. Whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses or the Church of the Nazarene or Presbyterians or Episcopalians or Methodists, you've got to go to the right church in order to go to heaven. And everybody else doesn't get to go to heaven. Because if they did, then you could go to that church instead. But you can't go to that church because my church is the right church. That church is the wrong church. Okay. And this is how they committed suicide. They took poison and they lay down in their bed. They all had on the same clothes, as interesting as that is. These Nike shoes that they bought, which were brand new shoes, by the way, when Heaven's Gate committed suicide, they had all these pictures out there and everybody saw these Nike shoes. Nike stock just plummeted because Heaven's Gate wore Nike shoes.
I wonder why Nike shoes though.
I don't know. Why?
Must be comfortable when you die.
Why? Yeah, exactly. And sweatpants.
There was something, the odd thing, they had, all of them had $5.75 in them.
Exactly, and that's how much it costs to get into onto the spaceship. $5.75. Everybody knows that. Back in the old days, they used to think you had to carry a coin when you died. One of the reasons they put coins on your eyes when you died was so that you would have 2 coins to pay.
The toll.
You had to pay a toll in order to
Right, the boat?
Karen was the guy that.
I think that's why they wore the Nikes too.
Oh,
It was related to that. That's what I was told. I don't know if it's true or not, but I wasn't a member, so I don't know. But I was told that the reason they wore Nikes was because Nike is
it has to do with the comet.
goddess of victory, was it?
Yeah, or something like that.
Nike was the goddess of victory in mythology.
It looks like the Nike swoosh looks like a comet. Yeah, there you go. And the Purple Shroud, that was kind of cool. As much fun as all that is, okay. Or not fun at all. How am I doing on time? Right.
17.
We humans strive to maintain a relatively favorable view of ourselves, particularly when we encounter evidence that contradicts our typically rosy self-image. It's really tough working here because I'm white. I don't know if you guys noticed that. And you guys talk about how horrible white people have been to you for, 400 years, right? So sometimes I get a little bit offended sometimes, not very often, but because I understand what the heck has been going on for the last 400 years. But sometimes you guys get Spaniards mixed up with Americans, and that's a little unnerving. They don't have any Spanish ancestry. Them guys came up from the south. We came over from the east. So we were different. Weren't we different? Aren't we different? Anyway, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance going on, and I feel bad sometimes. Not very often, but every once in a while. Most of us want to believe that we are reasonable, decent folks who make wise decisions, do not behave immorally, and have integrity. We want to believe that we do not do stupid, cruel, or absurd things. And of course, some of the things that happened to you guys was fairly cruel. The long walk, for example. That was pretty bad. Kit Carson. I was reading about that the other day. He burned all your orchards. Didn't he burn all your orchards?
Most of them.
Why didn't you replant them?
We did, some of them survived. We have, where my mom's from, the canyon, we have an orchard, they hid a lot of the seeds, the apples, and the different squash and different kind of plants that we grow in there, have been grown for a long, long time, and they were hidden a lot of times, like especially the medicine men, when they had a lot of stuff they couldn't carry, their paraphernalia, they hid it in canyons and different places.
And you're still finding that stuff.
Yeah, they still finding this.
That's kind of cool. My question is, why didn't you replant your orchards? The answer is you did replant some of
Some
your
of
orchards.
them, yeah.
Why didn't you replant them all?
That's interesting.
Not everybody came back.
That's true. Not
We
everybody.
might just burn it again. Maybe we're afraid that it was gonna happen again. We might just burn
They had
it.
to move it because the Navajos from Canyon Cito knew where these orchards were. They were leading them back to the same places. So they had to move.
So you didn't plant them because you're afraid they'd burn it again?
Maybe like if you were there and then you saw like your land being burned and out of just hatred, out of just like all that, and you don't want to see that again. Or
Okay.
you don't want your kids to see that. I mean, forest fires, like people start forest fires just out of stupidity.
It takes a long time to, like for trees, it takes a long time.
I've got an orchard on my place.
Cornfields, you can grow them back in a year again, but if
Sure.
you grow them back in the same place, they're just gonna come back. So you
Apple
gotta
trees takes 3 to 5 years for it to start producing. 3 to 5 years.
Unless if it just died out.
I'm sorry?
Unless if it just died out.
Well, if you plant them in the same place, I mean, if they survive for all those years,
The reason why I say that is because a lot
Almost
of
century.
Russian olives died out in the past 10 years down in Canyon
Russian olives are not native to this area.
Shade. Yeah, but they still die out. So a lot of trees down there die out.
Couldn't you replant the apples? Couldn't you replant the pears and the peaches?
Some of them were.
Being mean here. Replant your
Kind of
stuff.
making me want to plant now.
I don't know. Okay.
You gotta remember the people were dislocated too.
Sure.
It's not like they've got.
They were dislocated for 4 years, okay?
It's not like fields were burned and they were left to stay there and replant uncosted again. They were taken. Their plants were taken, their fields were burned and then people were taken. And then a lot of the people that went didn't come back. From our family that left right here, look what you like. Out of the whole family that went on the long walk, only 2 little girls that were 11 and 13 came back.
And
So
they
the whole family was almost wiped out.
almost completely wiped out. And those 2 little girls became the
Yeah, a lot
icons of your family.
Yeah,
But then again, things change after the long walk too.
the economy changed.
we got a certain amount of land now